Vistam 151, go around.
Go around, Vistam 151.
Vistam 151, heavy, thanks. The last departure lost the wheel on departure, so we're going to have to shut the runway down. So fly runway heading and maintain 3000.
Roger, Vistam 151.
Omnicon 7 heavy, we're going to have to close.
Welcome to Brasher Warning, the podcast that dives deep into aviation incidents with sharp analysis, insightful discussions, and just a touch of edge. If you're passionate about aviation and love a good post-incident breakdown, you're in the right place. Before we take off, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share with your crew. Let's get into it.
All right, we're going to unpack a really tough one today.
Yeah.
The 1996 Charkhi-Dadri mid-air collision.
349 lives.
349 lives lost.
2 airplanes destroyed.
So we're diving deep into the official investigation report, trying to understand how a Saudi Arabian Boeing 747 and a Kazakhstan Il-76 IL-76 could collide in what should have been routine airspace near Delhi. So let's rewind to November 12, 1996. We have the Saudi Boeing 747 flight SV-763 departing Delhi and cleared to climb to 14,000 feet. At the same time, the Kazakh IL-76 flight KZ-1907 is inbound, initially cleared to descend to 15,000 feet.
So you have that 1,000-foot vertical separation,
Right.
which is fundamental to air traffic control. This is the buffer that keeps planes from getting too close.
And for reasons we'll explore, that buffer just vanished. And the result was a mid-air collision claimed the lives of everyone on board both aircraft.
A tragedy that, it really reverberated through the industry. And I think you said it best, the loss of 349 lives. It's a stark reminder of how fragile these safety systems can be.
Yeah, and the human cost
Yeah,
of even the smallest errors.
absolutely.
So the investigation was spearheaded by a high court judge and aviation experts, and it focused on 3 key areas: the actions of the Kazakh crew, the role of Delhi air traffic control, and the weather conditions that day.
Okay,
Let's start with the crew.
sure.
The report points to their actions as the direct cause of the collision, highlighting miscommunication and a breakdown in what we call crew resource management.
The report concluded that the IL-76 descended below its assigned altitude of 15,000 feet, directly into the path of the ascending 747. And, it's easy to just point to that descent and say, well, that's why it happened. But the real question is, why did that happen?
Yeah.
Why did they descend?
The report delves into these cockpit dynamics, revealing a concerning lack of communication and coordination among the crew.
Imagine this. You have a cockpit where English, the language of aviation, isn't the crew's first language.
Right.
The radio operator's relaying instructions from ATC. The pilots are focused on their instruments, and, there's this inherent pressure to maintain the schedule.
Right.
And somewhere in that mix, a crucial piece of information gets lost.
Right. It's lost in translation.
Lost in translation.
Yeah.
The investigation found that the Kazakh crew misinterpreted instructions regarding the altitude of another aircraft. They believed they were cleared to descend to 14,000 feet, when in fact they were to remain at 15,000.
A fatal miscommunication.
Yeah, and it highlights, a very critical point. Communication is the bedrock of aviation safety.
Right.
And when that breaks down, the consequences can be catastrophic.
The report doesn't stop at just the crew's actions, though. It shines a light on the role of Delhi air traffic control and the systemic challenges that they faced at the time.
Yeah, you have to remember this is 1996. India's aviation industry was in a phase of rapid growth,
Okay.
and Delhi's air traffic control system was struggling to keep pace.
Wow, so they were growing really fast.
Yeah, and the investigation revealed several kind of concerning factors. Well, a key issue was the lack of secondary surveillance radar, or SSR.
Right.
This technology provides controllers with a much more detailed picture of the airspace,
Okay.
including altitude and identification information for each aircraft. Without it, Delhi ATC was operating with a limited view.
It's almost like trying to direct traffic on a busy highway with only half the information you need.
Exactly.
It's a scary thought.
While the report acknowledges that the air traffic controller's instructions were technically correct, the lack of SSR undoubtedly hampered their situational awareness.
Right, they just didn't have the full picture
They didn't have the full picture.
of what was unfolding above Delhi.
And that lack of a complete picture, coupled with the crew's miscommunication,
Right.
you have this perfect storm for tragedy.
Yeah, now weather is always a factor in aviation accidents.
Right.
What role did it play in this collision?
So both aircraft encountered moderate turbulence within a cloud layer shortly before impact.
Okay.
And this raised the question of whether turbulent conditions contributed to the IL-76's descent.
Right. Did it force them down?
Right, did it force them down?
Yeah.
The report concluded that while turbulence was present, it wasn't severe enough to cause the IL-76 to deviate from its assigned altitude
Okay.
without the pilots being aware and taking corrective action.
So it essentially ruled out weather as the primary cause. So we have this complex interplay of factors.
Yeah.
You know, a crew struggling with communication.
Right.
A strained air traffic control system and weather conditions that, while not the primary cause,
Right.
added another layer of complexity to this.
Absolutely. A somber reminder that aviation safety relies on a very delicate balance. A balance between human performance, robust systems, and a constant awareness of the environment in which aircraft operate.
And when any one of those elements falters, the consequences can be devastating.
Absolutely.
The Charkhi-Dadri collision stands as a testament to the high stakes involved in aviation. The loss of 349 lives is a profound tragedy, one that prompted a wave of reforms aimed at preventing a similar disaster from happening again. So the Charkhi-Dadri collision wasn't just this localized event.
It's often said that every aviation accident is a learning opportunity, however painful that lesson may be.
And in the case of Charkhi-Dadri, the industry really took those lessons to heart.
Oh, yeah.
So let's talk about the aftermath.
Sure.
What concrete steps were taken to prevent a similar tragedy from happening again?
Well, the most immediate response came from India's aviation authorities. They recognized that there was this urgent need to address those systemic deficiencies within their air traffic control system that had been highlighted.
Right, and we talked earlier about the lack of secondary surveillance radar at Delhi Airport.
Yes.
Was that addressed?
Absolutely. The implementation of SSR became a top priority, not just in Delhi, but at major airports across India.
Okay.
And this gave controllers this much-needed tool to enhance their situational awareness.
That's a significant upgrade. What other changes were made to improve air traffic control procedures?
Well, there was a major push to enhance the training for air traffic controllers, with a focus on communication protocols, conflict detection, and emergency response procedures. The goal was to ensure that controllers were equipped to handle the complexities of this rapidly growing airspace.
So it sounds like a complete overhaul of the system.
It was a wake-up call
Yeah.
for India's aviation authorities to invest in modernizing their air traffic control infrastructure and strengthen their safety protocols.
But the reforms didn't stop at India's borders.
They didn't, no.
Right.
The impact of Charkhi-Dadri was felt globally.
Right.
International aviation organizations, particularly the International Civil Aviation Organization, ICAO,
Okay.
they played a key role in disseminating the lessons learned.
For our listeners who might not be familiar with ICAO, what is their role in aviation?
So ICAO is a specialized agency of the United Nations. Think of them as the guardians of global aviation safety. They set standards and recommended practices that are adopted by countries all around the world.
So they took the findings from the Charkhi-Dadri investigation
Yes.
and used them to inform global safety practices.
Precisely. And one area where ICAO made significant strides was in language proficiency requirements for pilots and air traffic controllers. ICAO recognized that clear communication is paramount in aviation.
Right, especially in a globalized industry.
Especially in an increasingly globalized industry where crews and controllers from different countries with different linguistic backgrounds are interacting every day. So what did they do to address language barriers?
Yeah.
They strengthened their standards for language proficiency testing and training, ensuring that pilots and controllers possess the necessary skills to communicate effectively in English, the universal language of aviation.
It's the common language.
It is.
Yeah.
And this helped to reduce the risk of misunderstandings that could lead to, potentially catastrophic consequences.
Yeah, that's a crucial step towards creating a safer airspace.
Absolutely.
For everyone.
For everyone.
Now, were there other areas where the Charkhi-Dadri collision prompted global action?
Yeah, the accident also accelerated the adoption of collision avoidance technology,
Okay.
specifically what's called the Airborne Collision Avoidance System, or ACS.
Right, we mentioned that earlier.
It did.
Can you remind our listeners how ACS works?
Sure, ACS is a sophisticated system that's installed on aircraft,
Okay.
and it acts as an independent safety net.
Oh.
It's constantly monitoring the airspace around the plane
Wow.
and alerting pilots to potential collisions.
So even if there's a communication breakdown or a controller misses something,
Right.
ACS can step in
It can step
and
in.
prevent a disaster.
That's the idea. While ACAS was not mandatory back in 1996, the Charkhi-Dadri collision highlighted its potential to save lives.
Right.
So ICAO, along with other aviation authorities, pushed for the widespread implementation of ACS.
Wow.
And today, it's a standard safety feature on most commercial aircraft.
It's fascinating how a tragedy like this can drive technological innovation
Yeah,
and adoption and ultimately make air travel safer for
it
everyone.
really is.
We've talked about the systemic changes to technology. What about the human element?
Right.
The investigation highlighted the critical role of crew resource management.
Yes,
or
CRM.
in preventing accidents.
Absolutely. The breakdown in communication and coordination within the Kazakh crew's cockpit was a major contributing factor, and this tragedy served as a stark reminder of the importance of effective CRM training for pilots around the world.
So what exactly does effective CRM training entail?
Well, it's about equipping pilots with not just the technical skills, but also the non-technical skills needed to function effectively as a team. So we're talking about communication, leadership, decision-making under pressure, conflict resolution.
These are all soft skills?
They're soft skills, but they're absolutely critical in a high-stress environment like a cockpit.
Right. So it's about fostering a cockpit environment where everyone's on the same page.
Yes.
Sharing information or challenging decisions when necessary.
Exactly. Effective CRM training helps to break down that hierarchy within the cockpit, creating a culture of shared responsibility for safety.
It empowers every crew member.
It empowers every crew member to speak up, share concerns, and contribute to preventing those errors before they escalate into potentially dangerous situations.
And this emphasis on CRM wasn't just limited to India?
No, it became a global movement.
Wow.
Aviation authorities and airlines worldwide recognized the need to invest in CRM training.
Okay.
Not just as a reaction to Charkhi-Dadri, but as a fundamental pillar of aviation safety.
It's clear that the Charkhi-Dadri collision had a profound impact on aviation safety, prompting reforms and changes that continue to shape the industry today.
Still to this day.
But it also raised some complex legal and ethical questions, didn't it?
It did, yes. The aftermath of the collision was marked by years of legal battles as families of the victims sought answers and accountability.
The Charkhi-Dadri collision, it was about 349 lives.
Yeah.
Cut short families shattered.
Absolutely.
A void left where hopes and dreams once resided.
It's the human cost.
Yeah. And as we dig deeper into the aftermath, we confront this heavy reality that accidents like this aren't just technical failures.
Right.
They leave behind this complex web of human suffering.
They do.
And a long search for accountability.
Absolutely.
In the wake of the collision, there was this wave of legal action. Families seeking justice, trying to make sense of this senseless tragedy.
Trying to find some accountability,
What were the central arguments in these lawsuits?
So numerous lawsuits were filed against both airlines involved, Saudi and Kazakhstan Airlines, as well as the Indian government and its aviation authorities.
Okay, so who are they going after?
So the families of the victims allege negligence on multiple fronts.
Okay.
Against the Kazakh crew, the argument centered on the descent below their assigned altitude and the failure to maintain proper situational awareness.
So essentially pilot error.
Essentially pilot error was a key factor,
And the lawsuits targeting the Indian government.
Yes.
What were those focused on?
Those lawsuits zeroed in on the inadequacies of the Delhi air traffic control system.
Okay, so the lack of secondary surveillance radar at the time.
Exactly. That was a major point of contention, as you can imagine, because it arguably hindered the controller's ability to prevent the collision.
It's understandable that the families would seek these answers and this accountability. Of course. Trying to find some measure of justice in the face of such immense loss.
Closure, and these legal battles were protracted and emotionally charged, reflecting the difficulty of untangling this chain of events and assigning responsibility in an event like this. It wasn't simply about identifying a single point of failure, but rather understanding how multiple factors converge to create the conditions for this tragedy to occur.
And how were these lawsuits ultimately resolved?
Most of the cases were settled out of court, with the involved parties acknowledging a shared responsibility for the accident and these settlements while providing some financial compensation.
Right.
They couldn't truly address the profound grief and loss experienced by the families.
Right, of course not.
But it offered a degree of closure, allowing some to move forward without the added burden of prolonged legal battles.
But the Charkhi-Dadri collision wasn't just about legal ramifications.
No.
It sparked these broader conversations about aviation safety. Conversations that went beyond national borders.
No.
And touched on the very essence of how we approach safety in this globalized industry.
Yeah, it exposed disparities in pilot training standards, language proficiency, technological capabilities between countries.
Right.
With varying levels of aviation infrastructure development.
So a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. And in aviation, that weak link could exist anywhere.
Anywhere.
So the impact of Charkhi-Dadri wasn't just about reforms within India.
Right.
It was about raising the bar for safety globally.
Globally, it pushed international organizations like ICAO to take a more proactive role in harmonizing those safety standards worldwide, promoting a unified approach to training, communication, and technology across borders.
This deep dive into the Charkhi-Dadri collision has been a heavy but necessary journey.
It has been a heavy one.
We've explored the technical failures,
Yeah.
the human errors, the systemic flaws, and the legal battles. But amidst the wreckage of this tragedy,
Yeah.
we've also seen these glimmers of hope.
We have the advancements in technology, the enhanced training programs, the global collaboration. All of these point towards a future where flying is safer than ever before. But that future relies on remembering the lessons learned from accidents like Charkhi-Dadri.
It's a future that's built on a foundation of vigilance, on a culture of safety, and on a profound respect for the human cost of accidents.
Thanks for tuning in to Brasher Warning. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe so you never miss a flight with us. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment or review, and don't forget to share the podcast with your fellow aviation enthusiasts. Until next time, stay sharp, stay safe, and keep soaring.
American 1552, contact center 127.0.
1552, we're going to be Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. We have an engine failure. We're going to return to DFW.
1552, roger. And which runway do you need?
We'll take 18 right.
Roger, American 1552, turn right heading 020, just going to maintain 8,000.